Hello, my name is Belle Sarin, and I'm currently a fourth year student studying computer science at Azusa Pacific University in California. And today, what I'm going to be walking you through is just how to use Figma, the web application. And the point of it, or the learning goals, are to teach you how to make wireframes for your mobile app or even your web app or whatever you're making. And basically, learn how to plan out the UI UX of your app. And the equipment I'll be using is a Windows 10 PC. And basically, I'm really trying to convey in this video the importance of knowing how to use applications, especially this one, Figma, because it's just really good. And I found it to be just extremely useful for visualizing any application or software that I'm developing. And it really inspires collaboration within a team and helps visualize and see what an app will look like as a whole, and lets you kind of prototype the interaction that you would have with the application. And I've found it to be really useful for things like when I applied for a grant and for my senior project with planning out an application. So let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Google, and what you're going to do is to look up not just Figma, which you can, but you're going to look up for students. And this is because if you just look up Figma and then open it, unfortunately it's going to force you to, or you're going to have to pay for it because it does have a lot of wonderful services. But if you're a student or an educator, this is a great resource because they do give you free access to the whole, all the features if you can prove that you're a student or a teacher. So what you would do is apply for the free education plan, as you can see here, and then you would sign up if you don't have if you don't have an account. I do have an account, so I'm gonna log in with my email, and it's going to say, as you can see, that I'm already a verified education user. So let's get started, and we're going to create a brand new project. So you're going to push that little plus sign in the top right corner, and it takes a little bit of time to load because there's a lot to do with it, but here we go. So right here you're going to see just a blank screen. There's just a lot of gray, and you can change the background if you want that you're developing on top of. But on the left side of your screen you're going to see layers and assets. Right now we don't have any, but you're going to see a bunch of options on the top, and I'll kind of walk you through them as we use them. Top left corner are all your options like file, so if you need to export all of your images or your frames to PDF, you can do that. And what I've done in the past is, because I need the individual images of the wireframes, I'll export to PDF, and then I'll use, just like if you look up PDF to PNG or PDF to JPEG conversion, there are free websites where it'll just convert each page of your PDF to any sort of image type you want. But the other options are things like undo, redo, which you can do Control-Z, Control-Y, pasting. You can change how the screen looks, vectors, all these different options. There's plugins. I've never really used any of these, but I know that some people find them helpful. And then on the right side of your screen, you're going to see three little menu items. So there's design, prototype, and code. So you can code inside of this. I've never used it personally, but I think if you want to use CSS to design what it's going to look like, that's great. The main two tabs that I'm going to be showing you how to use today are design and prototype. Now we're going to start with design, and I'll show you how to use prototype a little bit later. But first, let's get started with just having let's get started by renaming our project. So you're just going to you're going to click twice there, and we're going to say demo wireframes. Perfect. So that's now the name of our project, and as you can see there's like a little arrow that you can click on and you can duplicate it if you want to make like demo wireframes 1, 2 for different versions, which I've done before. You can also see version history, which it's so helpful, such a helpful thing, because I've panicked in the past where suddenly something that I put in, spent a lot of time on, or like a wireframe, a single frame was gone because I accidentally deleted it. And you can just go back to version history and then copy that and then paste it back into your new one. You can export, etc. So first let's get started with going to region tools, which is this top left one here. And it kind of looks like a little hashtag. And when you click on that, on the right you're going to see under design that a bunch of options show up as to what sort of wireframe or frame you want to start with. So you can see that they have phones, tablets, desktop. I've used desktop a lot. You can even do like an Apple Watch. They have paper, they have social media. So if you wanted to like, basically prototype out how an Instagram post would look or a story. And then I guess Figma community has other things. And plugin icon can be really helpful. But what we're going to do is actually just go to phone, because we're going to prototype a mobile app today. You're going to click any option you have. You can do Android, Google Pixel. I have an iPhone 11, so I'm going to choose that. And immediately what pops up is just a blank iPhone 11 sized wireframe screen. And the first thing we're going to do is actually just rename it. And the first screen that I'm going to show you how to do is a simple login page. So we'll call it login. And now, let's say that I want to add 2 text fields for username and password. So I would go up here to the top left corner and under shapes, click there and you can choose a circle. They have like all sorts of things. You can even put in an image, which is I've done before, and maybe I'll do that later. But we're going to just choose a simple rectangle. And let's make it maybe about this size. That seems like a good size. And you can see that it's not really center. It gives you the dimensions, but let's center it. And it's really helpful because they have all these snapping tools. So if you were to like put it in the middle here, this would be the very center of the screen. But we're going to do it a little bit up. And that looks perfect. So let's, something I like to do, because I feel like it's kind of a modern design, is to add a radius to the edges, or to the corners rather. So this just kind of like softens the edges, and like eventually it'll just turn into like an oval. But let's set it to maybe 10, so that way it's still kind of squarish, but it has that nice softer feel. And some other options that you have are to change the color. So say that I wanted, sorry about that. Say I wanted the color to be like a nice, like a good solid blue. And that's perfect. And you can even change the opacity so that it's a little bit less like you can't, you can see through it. And then they also give you some options about like default colors that you're using already, if you have some sort of theme going on, and you can add to that. Some other things are like stroke, which you can add a new one here, and that just adds basically a frame around it. So you can do that. I'm not going to add one to this one, and you can just delete that there. Or if you're working on something and then you want to like test what it looks like without it, you can see or not see it. Some other things are you can add a shadow. As you can see, this was added here. You can add a blurring behind it, background blur, layer blur, and then there's inner shadow if you want it to be inside. And then you can export individual things. I've never actually, this is helpful. I've never actually used that. But yeah, and then you can tell it what the constraints are. You can do things like, say you want to align it horizontally, you want to put it to the side. Really helpful. And then you can change even just like pixel wise, X or Y axis, and then you can change the width or dimensions here. So yeah, that's about that. And then say I wanted to add some text inside. So like a default thing to let a user know, hey, you're supposed to put your like username in here. So inside, maybe I'll type username. And right now that doesn't look the best. So maybe let's highlight it and then we'll put it to the center. And maybe we'll highlight the text and we'll put the font size to 18. And then we'll change its vertical orientation to be in the middle. And let's zoom in a bit. So you just do Control plus. And we're just going to center it here. So maybe we'll expand it a little bit so that it's perfectly centered. And then let's change the color to white. And maybe we'll change it to be bold. Maybe not bold. That doesn't look too good. Thin. No. We'll just do regular. And something that I really like to do, especially if I'm indicating in a wireframe that this is supposed to be like fill-in text, this is just like default so that when a user starts typing, it'll change to whatever they're typing. I like to change the fill. So I go to fill and then I just make it a little bit less opaque or a little more opaque so that it's still see-through and kind of indicates to a user that that's not permanent text there. That's just indicating to you instructions as to how you're to use it. So now that we have that, something that I really like to do with layers is I like to group them. And I find that this just makes it a whole lot easier for me to navigate when there's like hundreds and hundreds of layers and components that are put into a single wireframe or a single screen. It's really, really key to group everything and label it. That way you always know what you're doing and what something is related to if all the layers are all over the place. So maybe here I'll rename this to login box, or I'll say username box. Perfect. And then I'll just go ahead and group these two things here. So you press one and then you hold down Control and press another, right click, and then you're going to say group selection. And now you can see that it's grouped the two things together and you can rename it to username. Perfect. So something that we can do now that we have all the formatting and styling the way exactly we want it, something we could do is just click on it, push Control, or you can just copy, or let's just do Control C, and then we'll do Control V, and you see that a second one has just popped up. And if you were to go over here, then you could just pull it down and there's a second one there. Now that we have this second one, let's go ahead and change those so that way we're clear about which one's on top, which one's on bottom. And we'll rename that to password, because this is going to be our password one. And then we'll change this to username box, or to password box. And then we'll change the text inside of here to say password. Perfect. So now if we're to zoom out, you're going to see that basically it just shows two little boxes that tell a user these are where you put your username, your password, etc. Now let's make a small button in which we can tell a user to log in. So this time maybe we'll use a circle. No, we'll use a square again. So maybe we'll make a little bit smaller one, not quite so big. We'll center it and we'll change the color to be maybe a lighter, maybe I'll do darker, a darker one, and then we'll increase that 10. And then we'll add some more text again in here. Just say login. Expand that so that it fits. And the snapping all really helps. And maybe we'll make this a little bit smaller, 13. We'll change the color to white. And maybe we'll put a stroke this time. Oops, no, not on here. We'll put that on the rectangle itself. Stroke, we'll put that to be maybe like a, we'll set it to this color, to the other colors that we've had here, and maybe we'll make it a little bit wider. Alright, good enough. So now you can see we have a simple login page, and if you wanted, you could even add a little text here. In which you indicate to a user that they can reset their password. There we go, centered. And you can make it as if this part is supposed to be a link, so you could change the color to be like a blue color. And then, where is underlined? We'll just do bold italics. So now this kind of resembles somewhat a page that you would use to log in. And say now we want to create another screen, right? So this screen is supposed to indicate that you're logging into some sort of app. So let's make another wireframe. So we're going to go up to the top left again, to the hashtag, choose iPhone X again. Maybe we'll move it so that it's in line with this guy. And let's rename it to be home. So this is the home page that a user would come to after they were to click login. And maybe we'll just make this, the whole point of this app is just to be a big button where you press the button and it does nothing, or it sends an alert. So now we have this big button here, and let's change the color to be, maybe we'll make it the same as the login page. And let's add some text to tell a user to press the button. So you say, press me. We'll make that quite a bit bigger because it's quite a big button. We'll change the color to white. And maybe we'll add some effects to it, like a drop shadow, so that it kind of looks more like a button. Perfect. So now we have these two screens, right? Very simple, straightforward. And now maybe we want to add some images, right? So something you can do is go to Google and you can type in, let's say you want, let's just look up simple Figma icons. Now, something I very, very much appreciate about Figma is that they provide so many free resources with icons and just like tablet or themes and templates and things like that that are just absolutely free to use, and they add such depth to any wireframe that you're making. So it's so simple that all you have to do is click on like any link that comes up. Mainly I tend to choose ones that are from the Figma website itself. So like there's this one, some other sources do have some, so you can click on those, and sometimes they give you links to like really good ones. But this very first one, it works perfectly fine. And let's go ahead and open the icon set in Figma. So if you're already signed into your account, it'll automatically keep you signed in. And what it'll do is that it'll load. And you'll see that there are like hundreds and hundreds of icons that they give you to use. and they're all kind of divided up by theme or like usage. So they have action ones, so say, let's see, so these are the action ones, so they're things like, you know, profile, check mark, plane taking off, printer, like all these sort of things. And then there's communication, like phone or location stuff, media, alerts, device, etc., etc. So just super helpful, all really great. I've used this exact one so many times, and I'll kind of demonstrate that later in one of my past projects. So let's go ahead and choose, maybe we'll choose a bell icon, because that will be good for what we're doing. It's just a button that will send an alert to you. So what you're going to do is you're going to just press on that icon. You're going to do Control C, and that will copy it to your clipboard. You're going to click back onto the screen anywhere you can, maybe even on this wireframe itself. Control V, and automatically it'll just be pasted onto your screen, and you can expand it. And you're gonna, while you do that, you're gonna hold down Shift, so that way it doesn't like distort the image. And you're gonna put it right above your button, and there you go. So sometimes, not all the times, you're able to change like the color of things. It doesn't always make a difference, but yeah, so it doesn't make a difference on this one, but that is an option. And you can add a stroke, so if you want to add an outline. And basically the way that you do this is that you have the image or the icon that's pasted here as a new layer. And you can go in and like go into each layer, and you'll see that it's actually made up of just individual components. You can actually hide them and see what it's actually made out of. But that's super helpful. Just to be able to, like, say you didn't want these two little outside things, you could take them off. But we'll just leave them for now. And so say that you want to also show what it looks like when the page has the alert on it. So what you're going to do is actually, or what I tend to do is that you're going to say home. So this is called home, and you're going to click on this wireframe. You're going to right click, and you're going to, or you can even just click on it, do Control C, Control V, and it'll create a duplicate. And we're going to call this duplicate home with alert. So you see that they're exactly the same, except this one is the one that we want to add an alert to. So let's go ahead and go back to Google, and we'll say Figma alert template. So say that you want it to be an iOS, like an iPhone or an iPad or something like that. Something that they also have are like iOS, iPad design kits. So what you're going to do is, like, this one's loading right now. You're going to push duplicate, and then it's automatically going to load onto your Figma account all of these free templates and like design things that are specifically supposed to mirror or duplicate or replicate an iOS OS. Here we go. So they have a ton of options, including typography. So if you'll zoom in here, you can see all of the typical fonts that Apple might use, which is really helpful. They have symbols, so these are like Apple specific. Looks like they have some other elements that they're working on. This is not what I'm looking for. All symbols. So they have symbols. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So now we come to the screen, all symbols, and this is kind of overwhelming because it's obviously huge, right? There's so much here. But if you were to zoom in, let things kind of buffer a little bit, this will just show you a ton of like Apple specific things, and this is really what I'm looking for here, is the alerts. So basically these are just action boxes where a user is given an option to do something. So let's say we want this one. We're not going to go dark mode. We're going to go light. We do Control C, go back to our wireframes. We're going to click on this one and go Control V. And just like that, you have an alert that's there. And something that I usually do is that I add an effect. And I put behind it a background. Let's see. Layer blur and so I'll add maybe like a background shadow, and then right beneath it, so you'll see over here in the layers that this is put on very top. So if you were to move it all the way to the bottom, it would be put under the circle, but we're going to keep it on the top because we want it to be at the very forefront. And we're going to actually insert a big rectangle right under it that's going to take up the entire screen. Now, again, we want this to be under the alert, so we're going to move the layer to be right under it. And now what we're going to do is we're actually just going to change the opacity. So you can do that either here or you can do it in layer pass through. And you can change what kind of thing it's going to be. You can do lighten. So this is like another way to do it. You can do darken so that it darkens the background. That's typically what I do. And basically it just creates it so that the layer is somewhat of like a, you know, when you click on like an alert or have an alert that comes up on your phone, it kind of like darkens and blurs the background. So that's really helpful, and you can even have it be like a ton of things. They have so many different options. What I'm looking for is a blur, but I guess I can't find it right now. So yeah, here are the 3 wireframes that we've created, right? And even something that I actually tend to do for my own sanity is that if I have a wireframe that's a duplicate and it's just showing like another component that would pop up, I would actually just move it right under it so that it's like horizontally. This is it's showing kind of like the storyboard or like app flow or app screen flow, and up and down is just showing like within one screen what are the different things that will pop up or show up for that specific screen. So now what I'm going to walk you through, now that we have our app, our very simple button app set up, what I'm going to show you is prototyping. So the way that you prototype is you're going to go up to the right hand corner, and remember earlier I referred to that we're going to mostly stay in design, but there's also prototype, which is you're probably, if you're doing your senior project at APU, you're probably going to use this. You're going to have to. And it's something that my team used and found really helpful. But you're going to go to prototype. And basically what this does is that you get options as to what sort of phone you want. So you can choose iPhone 11 Pro, iPhone 11. So on this one, we're just going to choose for it to be an iPhone 11, and we're going to choose for the sides to be white. Again, this doesn't really matter, but it's just like design if you want it to look a certain way. And what you're going to do is you're going to start actually creating connections between each of the screens. So first of all, we're going to actually just click on one screen, and that's how you get started. You know, if you click on if none of the screens are selected, it'll just take you to the general options, and you can't really do anything here other than change what phone it's going to present on. So we're going to click on your login screen, and we're not going to enable scrolling because there's no scrolling on this screen, but we are going to add an interaction. And the interaction we want to do is we want to add a type, and we want this one to open a navigation. So we want it to navigate to home, and we don't want it to be instant. We want it to be let's see, navigate to this on tap instant. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to, let's zoom in, and we want it to be on this, right? So this is the interaction that we actually want, not just on like the screen itself. So let's actually delete this. Boop. We're going to click on this login rectangle itself. So say we wanted to also group these, so we could do that right now. Let's group selection and we'll rename it to login button. And so we're going to click on login button, the whole group. Goodness. And we're going to add an interaction, a tap, and it's going to navigate to home. And that was really simple, right? So super easy. And say we also wanted to add an interaction when the big button was pressed. So maybe we'll group these right now. You can leave it named as group 1, but I'm going to rename it as big button. And we're going to use this big button to also add an interaction. Tap, and then there is something called open overlay, which you could do to, like, if you wanted to actually take this screen, this home alert, and delete like everything else that's in here. You could just have this be an overlay. And I believe that if you do that, then when you're interacting with the big button, this tap will open overlay and it'll be home with alert. We'll see how that works. I've never actually done that before, so it could not work. But there we go. And we'll open it centered. Close when clicking. We'll see how that works. Alright, so now that we have all these interactions set up on our 3 screens, you can see there are arrows between each of them. So these arrows indicate what we'll be doing. And even if we go back to design, those arrows disappear. This is just when we're in prototype mode. You're going to click this little play button on the very top right. And what that's going to do is it's going to open a new page. And this is how we're going to do... Oh, alright. Well, it looks like we're in the wrong size. So maybe let's go back. And we'll change our phone to be an iPhone 11 Pro, because maybe that's the screens that we're doing. And now let's try it. There we go. Now it fills the whole screen. So you can see we have our login screen here, and you can't actually type anything because that's not really how it works. But say we were to press login, and immediately it takes us to our screen. We do press me, and it looks like it does overlay. It looks a little wonky. But yeah, so that's how that works. And I think that's pretty much it. So that's all I'm going to be showing you regarding how to use the basic functionalities of Figma. Now I'm going to show you some of my past work that I've used with Figma and kind of show you the potentials of what you can do with it. And like other things that I didn't show you is the fact that you can put images from like, you can download them from the internet and then put them in here. You can use like transparent background images and put them in here. So all really helpful things, but let's go so I can show you some of my past work to show you some of the potential and like really helpful things. So something that I was working on was like this little app that I was just kind of making for fun. It was called Yam, kind of silly. But what I really want to show you is my work with this grant proposal that I did with a professor at my university, Dr. Grissom, another one, Dr. Ye, and my senior design team. So let me sign into my other account. Let's see. Alright, so this is actually my APU university account that I made, and as you can see I've done quite a lot with it, and these are all actually different things that, like, you know, the icons that I showed you earlier, these are all similar things for design and making things, and as you can see I've used Figma quite a lot for everything that I've been doing at my university. But what I'm really going to show you is, first of all, I'm going to show you my senior project's wireframes. And back then, this was my very first time using Figma. So these aren't, the fanciest or the coolest, but they got the job done regarding what we needed them to do. And you can see things like the whole entire app's layout. So again, kind of what I showed you earlier with screen flow. So this is the first. So this is our very first page. This is the splash screen, login, reset password, first time user, so create an account. These are all the teams. I'm not going to go into detail about what our app was, but basically it was search and rescue app, and it had to do with creating teams and like users contributing their location to geolocation app for search and rescue teams. So things that you'll see here are things like when we were designing our logo. This logo here that we added was just like a random one that we found online of a map. And, it got the job done in terms of what we were still figuring out what our app was even going to be, how it was going to function, what the pages were. And literally as we were creating these pages, we're like, oh, we should create a page that does this, or we need to create a feature that does this. And it really, really helped us flesh out all the details of our app. And you'll see that, here are all of our logos. I don't remember what our final logo looked like. I don't think it was any of these. So and then you'll see that like these are the various ways that this team list view screen are going to look. So there's an option where there's no teams, there's the teams, there's when you're creating a team, that's the modal that'll come up if you're joining a team. So all these different things, and a map. So we actually, if you look at this one, this image is actually like, we actually cropped it from being this huge image. But you can put images in there, and the way Figma works is that it'll crop it so that it fits the wireframe that you're putting it in. And back then I didn't really know about grouping, so you're not going to see very many groupings. But the way we organized it was like screen 1, 2, 3, and then like 5.1, 5.2 to say various iterations or various views of that screen. And even things from like the settings, and we added notes for each other. So that's something really helpful, is you can add like a note and say, or a comment and say, hey, work on this, or something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to add that. But it's really helpful because these are, you can see I did this 10 months ago, saying what we needed to work on for the various screens, and like notes as we were talking as a group. And then if you want to add the ability to scroll, or like, if a screen needs to be taller than the size that, of a normal screen, you can add the ability so that it could scroll and it's taller. So you just like increase the height, and you can change that here, or you could just like use an arrow to zoom it up. But yeah, so this was the senior project. Here's all of the screens, quite a few. And then, so this was my very first time using Figma, but what I want to show you is actually our grant proposal that we did as a team and with Dr. Grissom and Dr. Ye. So something that we did on for our group was also create a group, and that only comes with if you're signed up as a Figma educator or a student. So I really recommend you do that. And what you do is create a team, and you could say demo team, create team, and then you can add collaborators. But let's just go back because we don't want to do that. See, it already added it. So this is a sim. I don't know what I did there, but what we're going to go to is this radiation SBIR proposal. So this is a grant proposal that I worked on with my team and professors. And what I'm going to show you are our final wireframes that we actually submitted inside of the grant proposal itself. Now, this was definitely, I spent probably, let's see, we found out, I think 2 weeks before we submitted the proposal that we were even going to do this. So I spent probably at least 6 hours or 4 hours every single day working on these wireframes to make them top notch, the best I was able to make them. And you'll see all of our notes around, and the stars indicate which ones we were for sure going to put onto the grant proposal papers, because it could only be, I think, a max of 20 pages. But there's other things here just so for our own sanity check and our own sake to visualize everything. I created many more pages. So let's take a look at some of them. So what you're gonna see here is that we did create a splash screen. This is not our final one, but we created it. And then we have our dashboard menu, and this would be the main page, a home page of our screen, and we have a hamburger menu in the top left. And something that I'll show you here is there's so much going on in each of these pages, and I had to import and find all these different logos and change the colors and blah blah blah. But something I'll show you here is the fact that we have this, I added this Google image of the map, and so you can see that in the background, and it's much bigger than what you're able to see. If I were to take it out here, let's see, I don't know, it's not letting me do it. But basically, you can see it's quite a big map, and we'll set it back there. And then even this little bar is a little image that I made in Photoshop. I just needed a gradient. And then you'll see that I did this warning, like what I showed you in the tutorial. And let's see what else. I added this little circle thing that's also an image. And you can see all of the small icons that I used for every single page that I found on pages like this that I showed you. And some of them include the running guy, there's the little arrow, so all sorts of different things. And then something I didn't show you in the other one was the fact that you can, or I showed you that you can do it, but I didn't show you how to. But you can create a web page. So this is what our web application would look like. And it's kind of the size of a typical desktop screen, and it's bigger, and I did it in such a way that it kind of mirrored what we thought a desktop app would look like. So here's again the dashboard, which I didn't make a screen for it, but that's similar to what would be on the mobile app. And here's all the users, and here's again the map and the heat map that has to do with it. So all just really interesting stuff that you can add. And so basically the reason that I showed you this was just to show the sort of potential that you can have with what you can do with Figma and all the sort of features that come with it. And for me, this is just personally how I use Figma and the sort of things that I use it for. I found it to be just beyond helpful, and I'm kind of a design-oriented person, so it really helps me to be able to visualize what I'm doing before actually coding it and putting it together. And something else I did helpful here was that I put I added all of the icons that I really wanted to use into this little box. So that way you don't have to go searching through this huge mess to find exactly what you're going to be using. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this tutorial or this guide. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I can help you figure out how to use Figma better, or show you some other things. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this helps.